Stunning shift. Alberta's separation support surges. Canada faces historic divide. A dramatic political tremor is shaking Canada to its core. Since Mark Carney's unexpected snap election victory on April 28, support for Alberta's separation from Canada has surged in ways few could have predicted. What once seemed like the dream of a passionate fringe has gained real momentum, with a growing share of Albertans openly expressing a desire to sever ties with Ottawa. Their reasons are deeply emotional, grounded in frustration, fatigue, and a growing sense that Alberta's role within Confederation is not just undervalued, but actively undermined. To many across the province, this moment isn't about rage. It's about reclaiming dignity. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has become a lightning rod in this debate, carefully walking the line between supporting Canadian unity and standing up for Alberta's autonomy. Though she stops short of endorsing outright separation, her government has made it significantly easier for Albertans to trigger referendums, lowering the number of required petition signatures to less than a third of what it once was. While Smith says this is about giving people a voice, it's also a strong signal to Ottawa: ignore Alberta at your own risk. For her base, Smith's position is not radical. It's rational, a necessary stand against what they view as a federal government blind to the West's challenges. The recent jump in separatist support didn't come from nowhere. It's the result of a long and painful history of perceived federal neglect and interference. Alberta's economy, still heavily dependent on oil and gas, has been repeatedly targeted by national climate agendas. Carbon pricing, pipeline delays, and investment uncertainty have all contributed to a growing belief that the federal government is not just disinterested in Alberta's success, but actively working against it. The economic cost of federal policies has become deeply personal: lost jobs, stalled projects, and families left struggling to make ends meet. For many, separation has become not just a political idea, but an economic lifeline. Mark Carney's arrival as Prime Minister has done little to ease these tensions. Though born in the West, Carney is widely perceived in Alberta as an urban technocrat cut from the same cloth as his predecessor. His background in international finance, combined with a firm stance on green economic transition, only reinforces the idea that Ottawa is beholden to interests that don't align with Alberta's reality. His early efforts to reach out to Alberta leadership have been seen by many as too little, too late. The scars left by years of political misalignment, especially under federal Liberal leadership, remain raw and unresolved. This sense of alienation cuts deeper than policy. It's cultural, emotional, and increasingly generational. In many Alberta households, the perception is that Canada simply doesn't get them, that the values held dear in rural towns and industrial hubs are seen as outdated or backwards by decision-makers in central Canada. Conversations about independence have become commonplace, not just among political activists, but among farmers, oil workers, teachers, and small business owners. What used to be whispered in frustration is now said aloud in town halls and online forums. There is a powerful sense of identity forming around the idea that Alberta might be better off on its own. Prominent political figures are stepping into this debate with urgency. While Danielle Smith tries to channel this energy into institutional channels, conservative veterans like Preston Manning have warned that Ottawa must take these warning signs seriously. Meanwhile, former provincial leaders who support unity are sounding the alarm about the potential economic disaster a breakup would cause: rising costs, disrupted trade, and legal chaos. Across the province, the tension between these two visions is palpable. Some see a clean break as a bold new chapter. Others view it as a dangerous leap into uncertainty. There is another voice in this conversation that cannot be ignored: Indigenous communities. Leaders from these communities have reminded all sides that any talk of Alberta separating from Canada must include them, not just out of respect, but due to their unique constitutional and treaty rights. They assert that their territories are not up for negotiation in a unilateral decision by the provincial government. Any serious attempt at secession would have to include Indigenous consent, adding yet another layer of complexity to an already tangled legal and moral dilemma. Their presence in this debate forces a deeper reflection on what nationhood, sovereignty, and self-determination truly mean. Despite the loud headlines and early polling spikes, support for separation may not be as overwhelming as it first appears. After the initial emotional reaction to the federal election outcome, some surveys have shown support for separation softening slightly, with many Albertans taking a step back to weigh the real-world consequences. These include massive questions about border control, national defense, currency, debt sharing, and relationships with the rest of Canada. Even among those who are angry at Ottawa, there is also a deep love for the Canadian identity and anxiety about stepping into the unknown. Still, the separatist movement has found new momentum among grassroots organizations and fringe political parties that were once dismissed as irrelevant. Groups like the Wildrose Independence Party and other pro-independence movements are gaining visibility and attracting volunteers, donations, and media attention. Their messaging is increasingly polished, tapping into themes of personal freedom, economic justice, and Western pride. They claim Alberta has the resources, talent, and drive to chart its own course, and they frame Ottawa as an anchor dragging the province down. Whether or not they ever achieve mainstream success, they're influencing the political climate in powerful ways. Danielle Smith has stated publicly that she does not want to see Canada broken apart, but she insists that Alberta deserves more control over its own future. She wants more say over taxation, immigration, pensions, and resource management. To her supporters, this is common-sense federalism. To her critics, it's a risky flirtation with nationalist sentiment that could unleash forces she can't contain. Her ability to balance these competing pressures, appeasing her base while keeping the door open to federal negotiation, may determine whether Alberta moves closer to the edge or takes a step back. Prime Minister Carney, meanwhile, faces a moment of truth. He cannot afford to dismiss Alberta's unrest as mere theatrics. If he hopes to lead a united country, he must offer more than symbolic gestures. That means real commitments to respecting provincial jurisdiction, adapting national policy to regional realities, and listening, truly listening, to the frustrations of people who feel left behind. If his government continues on a path that Alberta perceives as hostile, no amount of national rhetoric will reverse the growing divide. The next few months could define not just his leadership, but the future of Canada's unity.